Before Sparta became a legend, it was a raw, violent, unshaped idea in motion. The Dorians had descended from the north, conquering the Eurotas Valley. They brought conquest, but not yet a distinct identity. The early Spartans remained scattered, a loose federation of warrior farmers, living among a subdued population of helots and perioikoi. The city possessed strength, but not yet a soul. And into this unformed mold stepped a figure shrouded in myth, Lycurgus. No other figure in Spartan history cast such a long, uncertain shadow. Some claim he never existed. Others say he was a prince who renounced his claim to the throne, journeyed the known world, studied the systems of Crete and Ionia, and returned with a grand vision. A few even assert he consulted the oracle at Delphi and received divine guidance. Whatever the truth, Sparta transformed radically and irreversibly under his name. Lycurgus didn't merely enact laws, he engineered a complete system. His reforms reshaped every facet of Spartan life, from birth to death, from farm to battlefield, from home to assembly. Property was redistributed, and gold and silver were outlawed. Meals became communal. Education devolved into institutionalized cruelty, and marriage became a civic obligation. Children, too, became the property of the state. Nothing remained untouched. Boys entered the agoge at age 7, as before, but now the curriculum intensified. Their purpose was not simply to become warriors, but to become Spartans. They were stripped of comfort, deprived of affection, fed just enough to survive, and trained to endure pain, speak little, and kill without hesitation. They lived under constant scrutiny, encouraged to report weakness and punish failure. Brotherhood was forged through brutality, and those who faltered simply vanished. Girls also underwent rigorous training, learning to run, throw, and sing war hymns. They were taught that their bodies were not their own, but instruments for the future army. A strong mother, they were told, produced strong sons, while a weak woman posed a threat to the state. Marriage rituals often involved ritual abduction. Husbands visited their wives in secret, not to foster romance, but to prevent complacency. Intimacy was not about love, it was about procreation. Pregnancy was revered, and infants were meticulously inspected. If a baby appeared weak or malformed, it was discarded, left on the hillside to die. Mercy was not considered a virtue. Survival was paramount. The Spartan diet was plain, almost a form of punishment. The infamous black broth, blood mixed with vinegar, symbolized not just sustenance, but an acceptance of hardship. There were no lavish banquets, no indulgence. Even kings ate alongside ordinary citizens, and excess was met with profound disgust. Above all stood the system itself. Lycurgus, it was said, established the Great Retra, the foundational oral constitution of Sparta. It prescribed a mixed government, 2 kings, a council of elders, 5 ephors, and an assembly of citizens. This peculiar balance of monarchy, oligarchy, and democracy functioned not because it was efficient, but because it was enforced through a potent combination of fear, honor, and constant surveillance. Sparta evolved into a machine, precise, merciless, and unyielding. But machines are cold, and beneath that rigid surface, something deeper stirred. The machinery of Sparta ran on bodies, and not only those of its citizens. For every Spartiate, there were multiple helots, enslaved natives of Laconia and Messenia, who tilled the land, produced the food, and bore the immense burden of Sparta economic survival. Without the helots, the Spartan elite could not train, could not fight, could not even eat. Yet the helots were far from passive. They harbored a deep hatred for their masters and resisted quietly through sabotage, escape, and occasionally outright revolt. And Sparta was acutely aware of this simmering resentment. Each year, the ephors ritually declared war on the helots, not metaphorically, but literally. This declaration permitted any Spartan to kill a helot without legal repercussions. It was a potent psychological weapon, designed to constantly remind the enslaved of their status and to train Spartans to view violence as a routine necessity. The most chilling aspect of this system was the Krypteia. Young Spartan men, chosen for their potential, were dispatched into the countryside armed only with knives and no provisions. Their mission was to live off the land, hide by day, and roam by night, killing any helot deemed bold, strong, or defiant. There was no trial, no appeal. The sole objective was to instill sustained, unpredictable, and constant fear. This was the true cost of Spartan order, institutionalized terror. While the citizens meticulously polished their shields, the helots lived in quiet horror. No walls protected Sparta, nor did garrisons guard its borders. The entire system was its defense, a delicate, brutal balance of brutality and obedience. And yet, the Spartans feared internal collapse more than external invasion. To preserve their unique society, they severely limited contact with outsiders. Foreign travel was discouraged, and merchants were regarded with deep suspicion. Iron coins replaced silver and gold, utterly useless abroad, but perfectly suited for internal use. Art served a functional purpose, music was warlike, and poetry was brief and blood-soaked. This self-imposed isolation granted Sparta immense strength, but it also rendered it blind to external developments. While Athens engaged in political debates in open forums, Sparta trained in silence. While Corinth built vast fleets and forged intricate trade routes, Sparta banned luxury. While Ionia explored the depths of philosophy, Sparta worshipped endurance. And for a time, this approach proved effective. In the 6th century BCE, Sparta stood tall. Its armies were universally respected, its kings widely feared. It forged alliances, intimidated rivals, and began to shape the Peloponnesian League, a network of dependent city-states sworn to Spartan leadership. Unlike empires built on trade or colonization, Sparta's power emanated through sheer dread. But pride invariably casts a shadow. The Spartans believed they had achieved a perfect society, viewing change as corruption and innovation as weakness. There was no place for artists, inventors, or intellectual explorers, only warriors, mothers of warriors, and the silent class beneath them who made it all possible. Yet not everyone accepted this fate. Within Sparta's rigid walls, seeds of unrest began to sprout, not only among the helots, but also among the perioikoi, the free but non-citizen inhabitants of Laconia, who traded, built, and crafted, yet never ruled. They were essential to the state, functioning, yet perpetually excluded. Even among the Spartiates themselves, cracks began to show. The population declined, while standards remained unyieldingly strict. Men who failed to meet military expectations lost their status. Wealth began to concentrate in fewer hands, despite the initial redistribution. And as the number of full citizens dwindled, the burden grew heavier on those who remained. Still, Sparta pressed onward. It trained. It marched. It watched. And the world around it began to shift. The Persian Wars shook the Greek world to its foundations. Cities that had once been bitter rivals found themselves standing side by side, confronting an empire that stretched from the Aegean to the Indus. Sparta, initially reluctant, emerged as the spearhead of the Greek resistance, and at Thermopylae, it achieved immortality. 300 Spartans, led by King Leonidas, stood in a narrow pass against a colossal Persian horde. The odds were hopeless, the outcome inevitable. But the purpose was clear: to delay the Persians, to rally the Greeks, and to demonstrate to the world what it meant to die without fear. And they succeeded. Leonidas fell. His men were slaughtered, but their stand ignited a fire that blazed across the Hellenic world. Athens struck at sea. Plataea saw the final victory. Persia retreated, and Sparta's legend became unassailable. But glory comes with expectations. After the war, Athens rose, bold, brash, and brilliant. It built formidable walls, powerful ships, and an empire sustained by tribute. It became the very heart of democracy, the shining beacon of philosophy. Sparta watched with a mixture of contempt and fear, for Athens embodied everything Sparta was not: openness, debate, and constant change. Tensions escalated, skirmishes flared, and eventually, war erupted. The Peloponnesian War was not swift. It dragged on for decades, a grueling conflict marked by sieges, plagues, betrayals, and shifting alliances. Sparta possessed the superior army, while Athens commanded the mightiest navy. The world watched in horror as two contrasting visions of Greece tore each other apart. Sparta ultimately won, but it was a hollow victory. Its triumph was bought with Persian gold. Its hegemony was short-lived, and its occupation of Athens bred deep resentment. Its attempts to control the Aegean faltered, and in defeating its rival, Sparta had stretched beyond its inherent nature and cracked. Internally, the crisis only deepened. The number of full citizens, those who had completed the agoge and maintained their property, continued to plummet. Land passed into fewer and fewer hands, shattering the Lycurgan ideal of equality among warriors. Some Spartans grew immensely rich, while others became disenfranchised. The once sacred bond of hoplite brotherhood eroded. The Helots seized moments of chaos, and rebellions flared. In Messenia, entire regions broke free, requiring years of brutal warfare to suppress them. Each victory came at a cost in blood that Sparta could no longer afford to replace. Attempts at reform consistently failed. Kings and ephors constantly argued, and foreign campaigns ended in disaster. The Thebans, once allies, rose to prominence in the north under the brilliant leadership of Epaminondas. At Leuctra in 371 BCE, the impossible occurred. The Spartan phalanx was broken, not merely bent, but shattered. Sparta's invincibility, the myth painstakingly forged over centuries, died in a single day. And with its demise, the irreversible spiral began. After Leuctra, the mask of invulnerability completely fell away. The Thebans invaded Laconia, an unthinkable act in earlier times. They liberated the Helots of Messenia and established a new, independent state. For the first time in living memory, Sparta lost territory, not to Persians, not to barbarians, but to fellow Greeks. The psychological blow was far deeper than the strategic loss. The system had promised permanence, and the agoge, the retra, the collective sacrifice, All had a single goal: survival through unity. And yet, here Sparta stood, weakened, fractured, and no longer feared. The decline accelerated. With fewer full citizens, the army steadily shrank. Lacking economic flexibility, the state simply could not adapt. Athens, even in defeat, still boasted its poets, its thinkers, its traders. Corinth had its merchants. Thebes had its generals. Sparta had only silence and fading memories. There were desperate attempts to reform. King Agus IV tried to redistribute land and revive equality, but he was executed. Cleomenes III, a more radical reformer, canceled debts, attempted to revive the agoge, and fought valiantly to restore Sparta's strength. He too failed, defeated by Macedonian armies and betrayed by old allies. By the time Rome rose in the west, Sparta was no longer a power, but a mere relic. The Romans admired it, to a point. They studied its laws, quoted its maxims, and praised its austerity. But they did not fear it. When Rome finally absorbed Greece, Sparta was spared out of nostalgia, not out of any perceived necessity. In later centuries, philosophers and kings continued to reference Sparta. Machiavelli admired its stability. Rousseau idealized its virtue, and Hitler grotesquely misused it as a model of racial purity. Revolutionaries admired its self-sacrifice. Fascists praised its unity. Athletes lauded its discipline, and monks found inspiration in its austerity. But the real Sparta, the brutal, contradictory, flesh and blood city, was long gone. All that remained was the myth. And myths are powerful. They endure not because they are strictly true, but because they are useful. They provide answers to questions we still grapple with. How should we raise our children? What do we owe the state? Is freedom truly worth more than safety? Does suffering inevitably make us stronger? Can unity exist without oppression? Sparta offered answers. Not kind ones, not soft ones, but answers forged in steel. In its rise, we observe the immense power of shared purpose. In its peak, the austere beauty of order and clarity. In its fall, the inherent danger of rigidity and silence. And in its memory, a mirror, not of who we once were, but of who we could become if we are not careful. By the dawn of the Christian era, Sparta had become little more than a curiosity, a ghost city clinging to the very edges of relevance. Roman travelers passed through its ruins, marveling not at grand temples or palaces, but at the lingering echo of the discipline that once governed the land. Gladiators were compared to Spartans. Philosophers romanticized their silence, but no one feared them anymore. Still, the ritual of remembrance endured. In late antiquity, Spartan boys continued to participate in the rites of Artemis Orthia, the notorious whipping ceremonies where they endured lashes before the altar, cheered on by an eager crowd. Once, it had been a rigorous test of manhood. Now, it was a mere spectacle. The pain remained, but the profound purpose had decayed. As Christianity spread, these pagan rituals ceased. Ancient shrines were abandoned. The agoge disappeared. The rhetra was forgotten. The names of kings were erased from common speech. Only the shell of Sparta remained. And yet, somehow, that shell outlived far stronger civilizations. In the Middle Ages, monks meticulously recorded tales of Spartan virtue. In the Renaissance, humanists eagerly debated its constitution. In the Enlightenment, Revolutionaries read Plutarch with profound admiration. They all saw in Sparta a kind of purity, stripped of corruption, intensely focused, and utterly fearless. But they also saw what they wanted to see. The true Sparta, the one of forced marriages, enslaved labor, and institutionalized violence, was simply too brutal for easy praise. So the myth was carefully trimmed, softened, and reimagined. Leonidas became a symbol of self-sacrifice. Lycurgus, a wise philosopher, king. Spartan women, icons of unwavering pride. The Helots, conveniently forgotten. The pervasive fear, diminished. The profound silence, misinterpreted as profound wisdom. Even today, we continue this practice. We emblazon the word Spartan on gym walls, incorporate it into military slogans, and invoke it in motivational speeches. It signifies strength, simplicity, focus, but rarely do we speak of what was lost. The immense cost of that strength, the countless lives broken to maintain that simplicity, the voices crushed to preserve that focus. History offers a multitude of models. Some inspire by flourishing. Others, like Sparta, serve as a stark warning through their extremity. Its endurance, not in stone, but in collective memory, proves that ideas can indeed outlive empires. But it also proves that the past is not always a reliable guide. Sometimes, it is a chilling warning etched in bronze. Because Sparta was not just a city, it was a question, one we still haven't finished answering.